I froze the moment I saw the suitcase by the front door. Not a weekend bag, not his gym duffel. A full rolling suitcase, the one we'd taken to Costa Rica for our honeymoon, sitting upright in the entryway like it had always lived there. "You're packing?" I asked. My husband turned from the kitchen counter. He had that look on his face, the same one he wore when he was about to explain something to me like I was a little slow, patient, controlled, just slightly condescending. "It's for the trip," he said. "I told you about the cabin." He had not told me about any cabin. I stood there trying to remember if maybe I'd forgotten, if maybe I'd been distracted with work and missed a conversation. That was the thing about being married to someone like my husband. I was always second-guessing my own memory, always wondering if the gap was in him or in me. His name was Fletcher. We'd been married 4 years. He was 38, a commercial real estate developer, the kind of man who wore a watch worth more than my first car and talked about square footage the way other men talked about sports. I was 31. I worked as a financial analyst for a mid-size investment firm downtown. We lived in a brownstone in Lincoln Park, Chicago. Fletcher's name on the deed, though we'd bought it together. He'd handled the paperwork. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. "I wasn't told about a cabin," I said carefully. He sighed. "Audrey, we talked about this on Sunday. You said it sounded nice." Sunday, I had been at my sister's baby shower from noon until 8. I had not spoken to Fletcher on Sunday except to text him when I was leaving, but I let it go. That was what I always did, let it go. Smooth it over, assume the best. I packed a bag and got in the car. We drove north for almost 3 hours. Fletcher drove and I watched the Chicago skyline disappear in the side mirror, replaced first by suburbs, then by forest. He had the radio on low and didn't say much. When I tried to make conversation, he answered in half sentences, eyes on the road, jaw tight. I thought maybe he was stressed about a deal. He was always stressed about a deal. "Is everything okay?" I asked, somewhere around mile marker 80. "Fine," he said. "I just need to think." I looked out the window and didn't ask again. We turned off the highway onto a 2-lane road that cut through thick pine trees. No gas stations, no storefronts. I checked my phone, 1 bar. I noted the road name as a habit from years of solo travel before I'd met Fletcher. Route 7, junction near a town called Millhaven. He pulled over about 20 minutes down that road. Not at a trailhead, not at a parking lot, just the side of the road, gravel, shoulder, trees on both sides. "Get out," he said. I laughed because I thought he was joking. He wasn't. "Fletcher, what?" "I need you to get out of the car, Audrey." His voice was completely flat. Not angry, not emotional, just done. Like he was ending a call with a contractor who disappointed him. "Are you serious right now?" He reached across me and pushed the passenger door open. I got out. I don't know why I got out. I think some part of me believed there was an explanation coming, that this was bizarre but fixable, that Fletcher would laugh and say, "Gotcha," and I would be furious, and he would take me somewhere nice for dinner to make up for it. He didn't say gotcha. He pulled the door shut, did a 3-point turn, and drove back the way we came. I stood on that gravel shoulder and watched his taillights disappear around the bend. My phone had 1 bar. I was wearing a light jacket over a t-shirt. It was 54 degrees and the sky was going gray. I tried calling him. Voicemail, first ring. I tried again. Same. I stood there for a moment doing that thing where your brain refuses to fully process what just happened because it's too far outside the range of normal. My husband had driven me to a remote road in northern Wisconsin and left me there on purpose. I was already dialing 911 when my phone rang. It wasn't Fletcher. It was a Wisconsin area code I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. "Is this Audrey Callahan?" A woman's voice. Professional. Careful. "Yes." Miss Professional. Careful. "Yes." "Callahan, this is Sergeant Diane Fowler with the Millhaven County Sheriff's Department. I'm calling regarding your husband Fletcher Callahan." I felt the ground shift slightly under my feet. "There's been an accident," she said. "On Route 7, approximately 2 miles from the 41 junction. A vehicle went through the guardrail. Ms. Callahan, I'm so sorry. Your husband didn't survive." I sat down on the gravel because my legs stopped working. I don't remember deciding to sit. I was just suddenly on the ground with pine needles pressing into my palms and a stranger on the phone telling me my husband was dead. The husband who left me on the side of the road 12 minutes ago. A deputy came and got me. His name was Holt, quiet and kind, and he put me in the back of his cruiser with a bottle of water and drove me to the county hospital, even though there was nothing left to do there medically. They had a social worker, a woman named Ms. Mott, Vega, who sat with me in a small room with bad fluorescent lighting and asked me standard questions in a very gentle voice while I tried to figure out what I was actually feeling. Shock. Obviously shock, but underneath it, something else. Something I didn't have a name for yet. My husband had tried to leave me stranded in the middle of nowhere, and then he died. Those two facts were sitting side by side in my brain, and I could not figure out what they had to do with each other. I called my older sister, Bridget. She drove up from Chicago that night. She held my hand in that hospital room and didn't say anything useless, like everything happens for a reason, and I was grateful for her in a way I couldn't express. We were told we could go home. The accident investigation was ongoing. Fletcher had apparently been driving erratically before the crash. But there was nothing for me to do in Millhaven. We drove home to Lincoln Park, to the brownstone, to my life. Except when we pulled up, the lights were on inside, and Fletcher's mother's Mercedes was in the front. I want to be fair when I describe my mother-in-law. Her name is Sylvia. She is 71 years old, has never worked a day in her adult life, and treats every interaction as an opportunity to establish hierarchy. She had never liked me. I had known this since the second time I met her, when she asked me what my father did for a living in a tone that suggested the answer would determine my worth as a human being. When I told her he was a high school history teacher, something in her face closed like a door. She was standing in my living room when I walked in at 2 a.m, the night my husband died. She was not alone. Fletcher's younger brother, Colt, was there. And a woman I didn't recognize, mid-40s, dark hair, wearing a silk blouse that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Audrey, Sylvia said. She didn't move toward me, didn't offer anything, just said my name like she was checking something off a list. Sylvia, what are you doing here? I asked. My voice came out steadier than I expected. We needed to secure the property, she said. Secure the... I looked around. There were boxes. Actual cardboard boxes, partially filled, stacked near the bookcase. What is happening right now? Colt stepped forward. He was 34, broad-shouldered, and had Fletcher's same controlled expression. Fletcher's estate will need to go through probate. Until that's settled, we think it's best if... This is my home, I said. The deed is in Fletcher's name, Sylvia said. And there it was. The thing I had not thought much about. The paperwork Fletcher had handled. My sister Bridget made a sound behind me like she was about to say something that would escalate everything immediately. I put my hand back and touched her arm. I'm his wife, I said. Whatever is in that deed, I am his surviving spouse, and this is my legal residence. I need everyone to please leave. The woman in the silk blouse said nothing during this entire exchange. She just stood near the window with her arms folded, watching me with an expression I could not read. That night, after Sylvia and Colt and the unnamed woman finally left, reluctantly, with Bridget's very pointed reminder that the police could be called, I sat on the kitchen floor and tried to think. Fletcher had left me on a road in Wisconsin. 2 miles later, he was dead. And within hours, his family was in my house packing my things. This was not grief. This was something else. I called a lawyer the next morning. I want to be clear about this because it matters. I did not wait. I did not defer. I did not give anyone the benefit of the doubt. My name is on the mortgage. My income was used to qualify for that mortgage. I had documentation. My attorney, her name is Rebecca Cho, and she is exceptional, told me within 48 hours that as Fletcher's legal spouse I was entitled to remain in the home, that Sylvia had no legal standing to remove anything from the property, and that any assets accumulated during the marriage were subject to spousal inheritance rights under Illinois law. Rebecca also told me something else. She'd requested a copy of Fletcher's most recent will as part of standard probate proceedings. The will had been updated 3 months ago. He had left everything, the brownstone, the investment accounts, the development company, to his mother. I had been removed entirely. I sat in Rebecca's office on the 14th floor of a glass building on Michigan Avenue and looked at that document for a long time. 3 months ago, whatever had been coming, he'd been planning it for at least 3 months. I went back to the house and started looking. I don't know what I was looking for exactly. I just knew that the answer to the road in Wisconsin was somewhere in that house. Fletcher was methodical. He kept files, physical files organized by category in a cabinet in his home office that he'd always kept locked. I found the key in the lining of his winter coat. Not hidden exactly, just in the kind of place you don't check unless you're looking. The cabinet had 4 drawers. 3 of them were business documents, contracts, permits, financial statements. The 4th drawer was locked with a separate lock. I called a locksmith. Inside that 4th drawer was a manila envelope. Inside the envelope were documents. A second lease agreement for an apartment in River North, signed by Fletcher Callahan and a co-signer named Petra Voss. Monthly rent, $4,200. The lease started 14 months ago. Petra Voss. I typed the name into my phone. LinkedIn came up first. Real estate attorney, Voss and Associates. Profile photo, dark hair, silk blouse. The woman who had been standing in my living room the night my husband died. I am a financial analyst. I spend my days reading numbers and finding the story inside them. So I pulled every statement I could access, joint accounts, credit cards, anything with both our names, and I started reading. Over the past 14 months, Fletcher had transferred a total of $260,000 out of our joint savings in increments small enough to avoid triggering automatic bank alerts. Always under $9,000. Always on a Friday. Textbook structuring. He had been systematically draining our shared finances for over a year. I printed everything. I organized it by date. I took it to Rebecca, and then I took copies to the Chicago field office of the FBI, because what Fletcher had done met the federal definition of financial fraud within a marriage, and because I was done being careful. But there was still the question of the road. Why had he driven me out there and left me? Why not just leave? File for divorce. Take the money and go? He had clearly been planning to disappear from my life. Why the theater of the woods? I kept coming back to it, and the more I came back to it, the more I thought about the will, 3 months old, everything to his mother, and the accident. Fletcher driving erratically on a rural road he knew well, a guardrail he went through on a straight stretch. I called Sergeant Fowler in Millhaven. I have some questions about the accident investigation, I said. Has there been a toxicology report? There had. Fletcher's blood alcohol was .02, barely anything. But the accident reconstruction report was still open because of one detail the sergeant mentioned, almost as an aside. The brake line on Fletcher's car had shown unusual wear inconsistent with normal use. Unusual wear on a 4-year-old car that my husband had serviced every 6 months like clockwork. I wrote that down and stared at it for a long time. I called Bridget that night. She came over and I laid everything out on the kitchen table. The transfers, the lease, the will, the accident report. And we sat there looking at it. He was going to leave you, Bridget said. He was going to do more than that, I said. I think he had planned for me to be on that road when he didn't come back. I think the intention was that I would be stranded, isolated, with no car and barely any cell service. And that by the time I reached someone, he would simply be gone. New identity? Money already moved. Petra Voss, waiting somewhere? The accident had interrupted a plan, not created a tragedy. Except someone had interrupted the plan before I did. The brake line. I spent the next 3 days making a list of people with motive. It was longer than I wanted it to be. There was Sylvia, but she'd gotten everything in the will, so why? There was Colt, but same question. There was Petra Voss herself. Maybe a relationship that had soured. And there was someone I hadn't considered yet, the name on several of the financial transfers, listed as the receiving account's authorized agent. Lena Mallory. I didn't know a Lena Mallory. I searched the name and got nothing useful for 2 days. Then I searched it alongside Fletcher's company name and got a result. A business filing for a limited liability company, registered in Delaware, with 2 members, Fletcher Callahan and Lena Mallory. I pulled a filing date. 19 months ago. 19 months. 3 months before Petra's lease. I sat with that sequence. Fletcher hadn't just had an affair. He'd built a second financial life, and Lena Mallory was at the center of it. Rebecca filed a civil discovery motion, and within 2 weeks, we had Lena Mallory's full financial picture. She was 44, a former bookkeeper, and she had received just over $300,000 from the LLC over its operating life. She had also, according to cell records subpoenaed as part of the ongoing accident investigation, been in contact with Fletcher's phone in the 48 hours before the drive to Wisconsin. Sergeant Fowler called me on a Thursday afternoon, 4 weeks after Fletcher's death. "Ms. Project Callahan," she said, "we've made an arrest in connection with your husband's vehicle. We're charging Lena Mallory with first-degree reckless homicide." She paused. "I also want you to know we've been looking at the full picture of what your husband was doing. The DA's office is aware of the financial fraud. They'll be in contact." I sat in my car in the parking garage under my office building for about 20 minutes after I hung up. Fletcher had stolen from me, had planned to abandon me, had, I believe, though I'll never be able to prove it entirely, intended me to be stranded in those woods long enough to buy himself a clean disappearance. And someone he'd stolen from in return had decided not to let that happen. I don't know how to feel about that. I've stopped trying to resolve it. The civil case took 11 months. Rebecca was tenacious and the documentation was airtight. The court found that the updated will had been executed under circumstances suggesting undue influence and potential fraud. Sylvia had, it emerged, been fully aware of Fletcher's plan and had received several of the transferred funds through a joint account with Colt. The brownstone remained mine. The marital estate, minus the funds that were now the subject of a separate criminal proceeding, was divided according to Illinois spousal inheritance law. Lena Mallory pled guilty to a reduced charge of reckless homicide. She was sentenced to 8 years. Petra Voss left Chicago. I don't know where she went, and I genuinely don't care. Sylvia sent me a letter 6 months after the civil judgment. I didn't open it. I gave it to Rebecca's office to file in case it became legally relevant. I still live in the brownstone. It took a long time before the house felt like mine, and not like a place where something had been done to me. Some mornings I still walk past the entryway, and have a half-second where I see that rolling suitcase in my mind. The Costa Rica suitcase, the honeymoon. Then it passes. I had coffee with Bridget last Sunday. She brought her baby, 8 months old now, round-cheeked and serious, studies everything with this expression, like she's taking notes. I held her for a long time while Bridget told me about sleep schedules and a home they're thinking of buying in Evanston. Normal things. Good things. I am 32 now. I have my job, my sister, my house with my name on it. I have a lawyer I trust and a bank account I control entirely. I also have a very firm rule about who handles the paperwork. That part, at least, I know how to fix. I've thought a lot about the word trust since everything happened. Not in a grand philosophical way, just in the quiet, specific way you think about a word when you realize you'd been using it wrong for years. I trusted Fletcher with the paperwork because I thought that's what partnership looked like. I trusted that a man who remembered my coffee order and surprised me with concert tickets was also a man who wouldn't hollow out our savings on a Friday afternoon in increments small enough to fly under the radar. I trusted that the life I was living was the life that actually existed. That was the mistake, not the love, not the marriage, but the decision to stop paying attention, to hand over the wheel and look out the window. The thing about people who deceive methodically is that they rely on exactly that. They rely on you being reasonable, on you extending good faith, on you assuming the best. Fletcher knew I would second-guess my own memory before I questioned his word. He'd built that dynamic carefully over 4 years, small correction by small correction, until I genuinely couldn't tell the difference between my own perception and the version of reality he preferred. That's not weakness on my part. That's what sustained, deliberate manipulation looks like from the inside. I want to be honest about that because I spent a long time wondering what I missed, what I should have seen. The answer is I saw it. I just kept choosing the more comfortable explanation. What I know now is that intelligence without honesty is just a tool for damage. Fletcher was smart. Genuinely, functionally smart. He built a second financial life and kept it running for 19 months alongside the one I thought we shared. That takes planning, discipline, attention to detail, and it produced nothing but wreckage. Lena Mallory had her own version of smart enough to find his vulnerabilities, to position herself, to decide that a problem could be solved with a brake line. And she'll spend the next 8 years in the cell thinking about how well that worked out. Bridget asked me once, about 4 months after everything settled, whether I was angry. We were sitting in her kitchen and she was nursing the baby, and I thought about it for a real minute before I answered. I said, "Not anymore. What I feel mostly is clear. There's something that happens when you survive a thing like this. Not the dramatic part, not the investigation or the courtroom, but the part where you're sitting on the kitchen floor at 2 in the morning reconstructing your own life from documents. You find out what you're actually made of. I found out I could read a financial statement under pressure and see the story in it. I found out I could walk into a lawyer's office the morning after my husband died and advocate for myself without anyone holding my hand. I found out that my sister will drive 3 hours in the dark without being asked twice. Those things are mine. Fletcher didn't build them, and he couldn't take them. I think the hardest kind of wisdom is the kind you can only get by going through something you wouldn't have chosen. I wouldn't have chosen any of it, but I would choose who I am on the other side of it, every single time. The brownstone is mine now. My name is on everything. And the suitcase, the Costa Rica one. I donated it last spring. It took me longer than I'd like to admit to do that. But I did it.